This is a kind of an unusual video from the perspective of what you're used to seeing from me here. And here, let me re-aim my camera a little bit. It looks like it's got an issue. But anyway, this is about a guy that I met the first time when he was 18 years old. He was the very first student I ever met when I went to teach in January 2001 at the college. I was sitting in my office, and he came in and sat down and talked to me for about 3 hours while I was working in my office. And he wound up being my first graduate. And I'll give you a little bit of an odyssey that he went through here, but we're going to start out with this.
How much air are we putting in?
I put about 35 or more, because you want to check for a leak.
Okay. All right, let's have a look at that. Look at here, we have a little bit of a bubble brewing.
I had taken my yellow Jeep over there to that place where he was working. He was launching a service department at a used car dealership that had a really nice big shop in the back. And it was the guy that owned the service department I knew really well. And so while he was working there, I went over there with my Jeep. I said, hey, my spare's got a slow leak. Every time I check it, it's flat. So another part of the backstory is that I was creating, I just got a tire machine for the automotive department, which never had one before I got that one. And I wanted the students to see somebody fix a tire. I was building this video so I could show it to my students so they know how to fix a flat, And this is a 14-minute video, and you can find it on my YouTube channel if you do a search for tire or whatever, or flat. Do a search for flat and you'll find it. Flat fixing, But anyway, this particular time, this guy was my first graduate. He was one of the hardest workers I ever trained and one of the smartest. The problem was everybody wanted to believe they were smarter than he was, and he was very humble, but he was also very capable. And I knew this guy well enough to know that he had a really, really good memory. He was sharp as a tack, but everybody had the idea that he was, they would get threatened if they felt like he proved that he was smarter than them. You might remember this video that this exercise I put together where you got 2 buttons and 2 relays, and you're making your your circuit swap, like running a power window motor one way and then the other, using 2 relays and 2 buttons, but you got to know how to wire it up. When I put that out there on paper, there was a whole bunch of people in there. He was the youngest guy there, and he figured it out before any of them did, and that just infuriated him. And a lot of the places he's gone, when just by performing in the job, he's proved that he was smarter than they were, it makes people mad. And it was the strangest thing I've ever seen. He bought a set of tools from the widow of a man that had owned a filling station. This was a really nice set of tools. This box was just packed with all kinds of real high quality tools. And my wife found out about it because she was working at the bank. This lady, her husband and her son had both died. She had a set of tools she needed to get rid of. And I wanted to make sure she didn't get the shaft by, somebody's getting them cheap. And he needed some tools, and so he came over there with me to that lady's house, and I pulled all the drawers open, looked at the tools, and I said, there's a lot of this is a professional grade mechanics toolbox. There's a lot of super expensive stuff in there. And she said, well, what do you think this box of tools is worth? And I said, well, $600 I think would be a fair price because of all the stuff that's in it and really the basic quality of the box and all that. So she says, well, will you give me $600? And he stepped up there and he peeled off $600 bills. He was working at a grocery store at the time while he was in my automotive department, but he was getting close to graduation and he knew he needed some tools. So he paid cash for this set of tools. And that was him right after he graduated, he's posing for this picture. Look at this toolbox.
All right, what are we doing now?
All right, you need to mark where the hole is so you don't forget.
Mark where the hole is so you don't forget, okay?
All right, and the next thing I would do is take out the valve.
Take out the valve. We're going to take the valve.
Whenever Adam did an oil change, and he could do just about anything, but when he did an oil change and a vehicle inspection, which he basically did along with the oil change, he would check the air in the spare tire. How many people do that? He was comprehensive and methodical about the stuff that he did. Now, I'm not going to say he never made a mistake, but typically when he did make a mistake, he would pay for it out of his pocket if the place he was working would let him do it. He had such incredible integrity, it was hard to believe sometimes. I don't know if I've ever seen anybody with his level of integrity, you know. Now, his first job that he got after he graduated was at a local GM dealer. Now, he was just getting started. They were paying him on the clock instead of commission. Right after he went to work there, they got a new service manager. But the interesting thing about it was, he was the only mechanic in that whole shop that would do automatic transmissions. All the other guys that had been there a long time, they despised automatic transmissions and they wouldn't do them. Now, he was just getting started. You gotta remember this was 2002, and he wanted to get his foot in the door in the dealership, and so he's working on the clock. And they weren't paying him very much. They were paying him less than $10 an hour on the clock. But he was doing automatic transmissions, and he fixed every one they threw his way, and he was good at it. But he was also humble, but he was basically, he had learned to do automatic transmissions. That's a picture of him doing one in my class, you know. And some more of this tire video. He was also very good at managing his money. That's why he could buy big toolboxes.
What is it now? Always keep in mind about tire monitors too. Usually you can tell if it has a plain valve coil like that. You know, if it's a steel one, it's definitely a tire monitor. But a lot of them that are plain ones like this, they can still be a tire monitor, or it'll be 180 out.
What do you do? What do you do if it's got a tire monitor?
Well, basically, I would break it down away from that, like. You know, when I pull the bead loose like this, I make sure this is far enough away from this side and 180 out.
Okay, so here he was, you know, giving some instruction. I had him say, all right, now while you're doing this, you need to explain it like you were teaching the students, because that was the purpose of this video. And so I said, okay, this is cool. So he and I had a really good way of talking back and forth with one another, you know, and his answers always came back really quick. Almost sounded like they were scripted, but they weren't. Now the problem was at the GM dealer. The service manager, the new service manager came. This guy, with all due respect, had been a service writer and wasn't even qualified to be a service manager. You know, but anyway, his first job, he was turning a lot of labor hours doing those transmissions, even though he was getting paid on the clock. Well, because he was getting paid on the clock, but all these massive labor hours were coming in from his service bay, the service manager, whenever these older mechanics would be ticked off because they didn't turn enough hours, he was taking hours that this guy that Adam was his name, that Adam had turned, and he would give them to these other mechanics to boost their pay to keep them happy. And it was, and Adam could see that in the paperwork. The hours he got credit for turning, he knew how many hours he had turned because he knew what every job paid. You know, he knew how much every job flagged. And so here he is working for, you know, less than $10 an hour on the clock, and he's cranking out massive labor hours, and they're charging $60, $70, $80 a labor hour, you know. And so, but they're taking all this money that he was earning and giving it to these other guys. Just to keep them happy, you know, because he was afraid, you know, I don't know what he was afraid of, but anyway. And Adam was aware that he was doing this because Adam was pretty sharp. You know, people aren't going to get nothing past him, but he's also humble. He wasn't a particularly confrontational person, and so people felt like they could push him around.
Pull your weights up, you don't damage the machine or damage the rim.
You can watch him work and tell that he's good with his hands, you know.
So you pull off the weight.
Does it matter about the weights on the inside? No, you'll do that when you balance it.
Okay.
Pull up the upper against the balance it. So take your roulette. What I do is I used to take these smaller curved in. This one's more for low profile tires, but every other tire uses this. And then spin it around. It's not plugged in. They would look around for you.
Alright, here he was doing a little more instructional stuff. You know, he basically, I knew he had it in him to be a teacher too, you know, because he was pretty sharp. That was, he's continuing this job on this spare. Well, I told him to confront the service manager with the numbers. The service manager tried to deny it. Now you got to remember, the place where he's fixing this tire is a different place than the GM dealer I'm talking about, because what I'm doing is I'm doing flashbacks here. So he confronted the service manager. He says keep track of it, you know, for a week, couple of weeks, whatever, and then go in there and tell him that you know what he's doing and that you don't like it. And so he went in there, and the guy said, no, I'm not doing that. And he threw the numbers down on the desk and he says, look at this. This is what I turned, and this is what you're giving me credit for. And you're giving these other hours to these other guys. And so the service manager was stuttering and stammering and didn't know what to say. And so what happened, hold on, let me get this next little tire.
Use a mark it like this. I know where it is in here too.
He's making a mark around where the nail is so he won't lose track of it after he removes the nail, which is smart.
Simple as that.
There's a hole, we got a nail there. Yep.
Alright, but always wear safety glasses.
Safety glasses are good, yeah. They're our friend.
Alright.
Now what are you going to do?
I'm going to get the tools I need to.
Alright, so I found out they needed a guy at the Lincoln Mercury dealer. And I told him about it, so they loaded his tools, took him to that dealership, they hired him, and he made good as a line technician. He worked there for a pretty good little while. And they liked the work he was doing. And he was starting to get his ASE certifications at the time. You can basically see the patch on his sleeve there and all that.
Robomatic on there helps to kind of take away any debris or anything. Loosens up the, in my opinion, loosens up some of the treads, you know, so you can peel it away better with this. And the vulcanizing fluid that prepares the tire for the patch. And this is something extra I do. When I put the patch on, I put beads in there too. And because of this, I've never had a comeback using bead sealer.
Never had a comeback using bead sealer.
If it came back, you know,
now where do you put the bead sealer?
I'll show you. I put a little bit over the patch. I've never seen anyone else do that, and I don't know if it's right or wrong, but I've never had a comeback, so maybe it's right.
Okay, all right.
One of the funny things that happened while he was at the Lincoln Mercury dealership was there was a Lincoln that came in there with a really bad smell. And so one of the mechanics that was working on it raised it up on a lift, and somehow up in there on the frame or above the muffler or something or whatever, there was a dead, stinking, rotten cat, corpse of a cat. And so none of the mechanics that were in that part of the shop wanted anything to do with that. They didn't know what to do about it. The cat needed to be got out of there. And so I said, I'll get that cat out of there. And so he put a shop rag over his face, and he got a big long pair of pliers that he had, that, you know, that long needle nose pliers that had the hooks on the end for grabbing hoses. And he reached up in there and he dragged that cat out of there and cleaned all it out. He was willing to do stuff like that, you know, just because it was a challenge. He always liked a challenge, and he was typically good at everything that he did. Now I will tell you, there's another dealership he worked at where they would give all of the other people really gravy jobs and give him the hard jobs nobody else wanted to do, because he was humble and he wouldn't fuss about it. And he went to the service manager and says, why are you giving everybody else a gravy and you're giving me this, you know, this junk work that nobody wants on these older cars with rotten hoses and all this kind of stuff? She says, well, you're the only one with the patience to do it. And so he basically, that was a Toyota dealership, and he had worked his way up to being the Toyota master technician by that time, you know, and by Toyota standards. He had gone to the schooling and all. But there was another mechanic at that Toyota dealership that was working on a vehicle that for some reason the transmission controller or something wouldn't communicate. And the guy says, I'm going to order a transmission controller. And Adam says, you better check the wires on that thing because you don't know what wire harness has got going on. Oh, no, you're an idiot. I know what I'm doing. So the guy puts the transmission controller on. It's still not fixed. And so he digs a little deeper and finds out that rats have chewed the wires, which he should have checked to start with. Now, I don't know who wound up paying for that transmission controller, but that was the kind of stuff, you know, that he ran into. Whenever he would have the right answer, people wouldn't want to listen to him because they didn't have any respect for him, because he was kind of a humble guy. But he was extremely sharp, he was extremely capable. He just didn't particularly stand up for himself the way that he should have, you know. Now, while he was a Lincoln dealer, he earned his ASE master certification. There was an old parts guy there that that I worked with back in 1983, a guy named Sam. And I went up there to get some parts that I had ordered while Adam was working there. And I asked Sam, I said, Sam, what do you think about Adam? And he said, well, he said, I just as soon have him working on my car as anybody in that shop. He's one of the best guys out there. Because Sam was extremely sharp, and he could watch these mechanics work and look at the parts they bought and tell if they knew what they were doing or not. And I said, well, what about that guy over there that graduated from UTI in Houston? And there was a guy over there that, you know, had bounced from shop to shop around town. And, you know, Sam shook his head. I'm not hating on UTI in Houston, but I think a lot of times what goes on out there is you got a lot of guys going through those programs, and they talk to one another, and they tell each other how they can do slippery stuff to keep from having to do the work but still pass the course. I mean, that's what happens a lot of the time when you got a lot of people going through the same program and they're all doing the same material. They tell everybody what the easy path is, and they don't learn as much as they should. And that's no fault of the school. It's because students, you know, basically are typically, a lot of them, and I've seen this over the 19 years I taught, they're looking for the path of least resistance. You give them something hard to do, they're going to whine and complain about it. And I don't know how much live work they do at UTI either, but anyway, I mean, I think UTI is basically a good school, but the way it has everything to do with how the student approaches that. And everybody going in the same direction, if you do everything the same way everybody else does, then that's a problem. And I really don't know how you would fix that.
Cool.
On the tire to have a smoother surface so the patch can go on it easier. And we use this rubs on the patch.
Right.
And what I do whenever I put a patch on is I take my knife and kind of just pull the seal a little bit, because some of these seals are so hard to get up that you'll end up pulling the patch off. So before I do, I just take a little, you know, like that, so I can get something to grip on it.
Right. Did you learn that from experience, or did somebody tell you about that? Experience. So you pulled some patches off and didn't like it?
Yes, that was fun.
What if you left that on there? Would that be okay? Now tell me about that tool.
Some folks do that. I don't do that. This will take away some of the surface and make it flat, so we can kind of scuff it up a little bit.
All right.
Yeah, the thing about it is, he's got critical thinking skills, and he's not a conformist, and he finds his own way of doing stuff. He decided while he was working at this place that you see him working at right now, over in that other town, that he was going to go take some more college courses. So he enrolled in an English course, English composition course or something like that. And the instructor of that program he entered in that English course, she gave them all of their assignments. She goes, these are the assignments you're going to have to complete this semester or this term, whatever. And so so he looked at all of those, and he did every single one of those assignments and completed them within 2 weeks. And he was done. You know, there was nothing else he needed to do. And everybody else was griping and whining and complaining that the work was too hard and they were giving him too much to do. Well, this is how he does. He's got so much energy, and he's totally focused on the best way to do every job that he does. And that's one of the things that has always impressed me about this guy. You know, my two boys are about the same way. You know, they work harder than just about anybody else in their fields, and they're good at what they do. This guy right here has got the same kind of integrity that I tried to train into my own kids, and he's about the same age as them too. And so, but anyway, he's a critical thinker. He finds the best way to do stuff, and he surprises people with what he can do when they really don't, you know, they don't think as much of him as they should. because they just don't understand him, and I do, because I've known him ever since he was 18 years old. Now, a good friend of mine, this is how he went to work at the place where you see him working now. And this guy had purchased a dealership that had, gone broke. The brand new, big, beautiful facility had a service department in the back and all that, and he was going to put in a really nice used car lot, which he said, and he's still over there. He sells really, really nice used cars. He's one of the few people that sell used cars that I completely trust enough to send people over there. And I know he's going to do them right, Anyway, he wanted somebody to launch his service department, and I sent him Adam. And he knew him because, they had worked at that GM dealer at the same time, briefly. But I sent him, and this is where the tire repair video was made.
You did it real quick, Adam. Cut it out of there. Cut it away.
It's my special knife.
Nice knife. Yeah, it's really cool.
This is a
valve stem
puller tool.
Valve stem puller tool.
See how it had little indentions?
It's got a little indention there.
All right.
Would it work better if you put any kind of deep sealer around that valve stem or anything?
I never have. I wonder if I should start doing that.
Yeah, I don't know. Most people probably don't, but I'd probably put a little soap on it or something. That's just my idea.
Yeah, I never thought of that. That's not a bad idea.
Okay.
All right, next thing is you put the tire back on.
Yeah.
And keep in mind,
put it on that black wall to the inside.
right, you got black wall on here.
Yeah, black wall on the other one. Or I mean, black wall to the outside, excuse me. All right, you gonna put some soap on that or anything? Or?
You can, but I know this tire's gonna be easy to put on, so.
Yeah. Works out really good.
But yeah, soap is a good idea, but on ones like this where I know they're going to go on easy, I don't worry about it. But on some low profiles, yeah, you will.
Did you put some low profiles on before?
Yeah.
Are they hard?
Some of them are. Yeah. But actually, the ones with the Corvette are pretty easy.
Yeah.
I was surprised at these. All right. Next thing you do is now the pedal down here, you have to kind of see, if once you get some air, push down the way it pushes the tire up. Best put the valve stem on. I try to get without doing that before, but
you pull it out so it'll go in there quicker.
Yeah. Try to get away without doing it, but that's not. I was popping loose right here. If when it seats, the tire may jump and come off the track.
One of the things that over here that I thought was interesting was there was they wound up taking on trade or something, this Ford Windstar or Freestar or something that needed a transaxle, and he told them, he said, I can put a transaxle in there, and they didn't know if he could do it or not, but they ordered a new transaxle. They hadn't ever seen what he was able to do, but he put that transaxle in there, and just less than a day, and pull the other one out. You got to pull the H-frame and all that stuff off. It's a pretty big job. He popped it in there and got it going and all that, and just surprised them. And of course, it turned out later that whenever Ford built it, they put the wrong kind of fluid in it, and it had a little bit of a torque converter surge that it picked up. But anyway, that one way or another, he was just very capable and able to do stuff. I mean, even down to the electronic stuff. Where you're doing network diagnostics and all that, and you're having to find out what's going on there. But you're seeing him fix a tire here, but he was capable of light years more than what you're seeing him doing here. But every single job he does, he takes it very seriously. He's totally focused on it, and he's not there to play. And every moment of his day is spent doing something productive. And so he's just, he's like I say, he's just an exceptional employee. But a lot of the people he worked for never appreciated what they had. He was there every day. He was there early. He worked all day. He worked as harder than anybody else, and he never got crossed up with anybody. And he typically, he'd take the blame sometimes for stuff that wasn't his fault. Well, I posted this video, 14 minutes, on Motor Age had a website then, and they were just starting a website. I mean, this was long years ago, 20 years ago probably. And I put this whole video on there, the entire thing. And I got a comment from some guy who had some handle on that site, and he told me, oh, you should have been wearing a full face shield, blah, 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 and all this kind of stuff. And I said, have you ever even been in a tire shop? Because nobody in a tire shop wears a full face shield. That's ridiculous. You know, you can always come up with all kinds of safety stuff people should have done, but there was nothing dangerous about anything that Adam did. But this guy told me the name of his tire shop in Texas. Now, this tire shop here is one I created with the AI. This is not the tire shop I'm talking about. But this guy, whenever he told me who he was, named his tire shop, I realized I knew the guy. And when I was working in Texas, we had these Case forklifts. In the rear, I mean, the steering tires on the back of them were basically pretty much the same as a tire on a pickup truck or something like that, about the same size and all that. And so they kept going flat and going flat and going flat and going flat, you know, and we would have to send them to get them fixed, you know, about 15 miles up the road with a girl that drove up there every day. And sometimes they went flat so often. We had 2 of those forklifts, and we had 17 forklifts in all, or 18 or whatever. Those 2 Case forklifts had flats all the time. And you know, you can't make no money if it's sitting there on the block because of flats off of it. And so he came. I told my supervisor, I said, I know a guy that's got a tire machine. He'll sell us for $200, and we can fix all these flats, because we had flats on pickups, and you know, not some of the forklifts that had heavier tires, but on that one we did. And I said, this would save us a ton of money. The thing would pay for itself in no time flat. And we could get those, you know, start getting these tires fixed and get this stuff back on the yard. Well, my supervisor was kind of a bonehead at the time, and he says, no, we're not fooling with that. He said, I'm going to send these to this tire place over there that he was talking about. That this tire place right here that this guy sent me a message from. This is a rewind, and he put aircraft retreads on there. Had special rims built. He spent $1,000 getting 4 tires built, you know, 4 rims specially made with tires to go on them that were aircraft retreads. That was supposed to solve all the problems with those flats. Well, those tires went flat just as often as the other ones did, only we had to send them twice as far to get them fixed, which was ridiculous. And they wound up eventually putting polyurethane foam in them or something, you know, just making them tires without air. But anyway, I told that guy on my reply, I said, yeah, you sold us those aircraft retreads that didn't hold any air any better than a regular tire. And that was kind of funny, because this guy suddenly realized who I was, and I realized who he was, and we hadn't talked to each other in probably more than a decade. The next morning, before class started, when I was preparing for my day, he called the phone in my office. I have no idea how he got the number. But we had a long, friendly conversation about the people we had both known in Southeast Texas, and you know, the supervisor I'd had then and all that kind of thing. But I don't have any idea how he got my number. Well, my guy Adam worked for a few years at a Toyota dealership after that, and worked his way up to Toyota Master. He kind of got tired of being handed all the crappy work while everybody else was, you know, getting all the gravy. And he just finally said, look, you know, I've really had enough of this. And he became my adjunct instructor and kept that job for a couple of years after I retired. Well, he owned a bunch of land out there in that same town where the college was. And so he started raising blueberries, and then he got him some cows and stuff like that, and he started farming. And he started working part-time at the stockyard, because he only had to work part of the day as my adjunct instructor. And the students that he taught just really thought the world of him, you know, because he was always really, really good, took the job seriously. He was a good teacher, good at explaining stuff. He understood things. But he worked there for another couple of years under the other instructor after I retired. And he sent me this post. A Chevy Cobalt came in, you know, with an tumble education. The students cleaned the throttle body. I removed the vacuum line, used ATF and Seafoam that he sucked through the vacuum line to basically clean the inside of the intake. Made a lot of smoke. They were amazed and said, where'd you learn this? He said, they learned this in the same service they were working in right now 19 years ago. That was how long ago that was, you know, that he had been in my program. Well, today, he mostly raises cows and other livestock on his farm of several dozen acres. He's got a pretty good sized farm, and he works here right by himself, and he's built, I don't know how much fence. I mean, just right by himself. He's bought the stuff, he's built the fence, he's raising cows, He's got a pretty good sized herd of cows. He's got a whole bunch of chickens and all this kind of stuff. And in addition to working at the stockyard, he's got these several flea market booths at places where they'll manage your booth for you, you know, if you'll just put your stuff out there and all that. And he goes to swap meets and all that kind of stuff. And he's got a tremendous amount of good sense about him. He always has had. And he's really one of my favorite people. This last little picture here was one of my students brought her grandson up there and wanted me to see him. And so I'm holding this little kid, and he's sticking out his tongue, and I'm sticking out my, this was 5 years ago, 5, 6 years ago. And there's Adam over there on the side taking my picture. I'm holding this baby. Anyway, I don't know how many of you guys will make it to this point in this video, but I appreciate you watching. Tell me what you think about this, and I'll talk to you guys later on. I hope to see you next week.